Hello, I am Elise Jesse, and I am frustrated, and I'm sure you are too. And I'm going to tell you why I am just beside myself after the Bengals flounder in Monday Night Football against the Commanders right here on Deep in the Stripes. This is the sickest Bengals podcast around.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way.
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
The morning after a Monday Night Football loss where your team is 0-3 certainly feels like a hangover and one of the worst that you can possibly have. I am sure that everyone by now, the Bengals fans are sobering up and realizing where exactly their team is sitting. This is the exact opposite of where most people pegged the Cincinnati Bengals at the start of the season. You remember all the hype. It was all about Joe Burrow had a fully healthy training camp. We were excited to see that he was healthy. His wrist was doing good. The ligaments in his throwing hand looked to be okay. Obviously, there was a little bit of contract drama with Ja'Marr Chase, but I certainly, for one, didn't think that it would affect them. And I don't think that it affected them in week 3, the Joe Burrow-Ja'Marr Chase connection. You saw exactly what you wanted to see from the Cincinnati Bengals at the start of this game with Joe Burrow going to Ja'Marr Chase. They score a touchdown early. They start fast. They look like an aggressive offense. And you know what? I thought that Joe Burrow and the offense did what they needed to do to win the game on Monday Night Football. And Cincinnati's defense just crapped the bed. Like somebody please get some blood work for the Cincinnati Bengals defense because they looked anemic last night. There was no life. What were we even watching? There was one point in this game, and I'm looking around and I see the stadium and it's packed full of Bengals fans, over 66,000 people there last night. 6 minutes to go. And you have a rookie quarterback in Jalen Daniels who is backed up on the 45. 2nd and 20. And in everyone's minds, I'm sure we're all thinking, oh yeah, the Bengals can get a stop here. I mean, and there's plenty of time for the Cincinnati Bengals to give that ball back to Joe Burrow and go down and score and win the game and win their first game of the season on a big, bright stage in front of everybody watching. And no, that is the opposite of what happened. Jalen Daniels did not look like a rookie quarterback last night. He looked poised. He looked calm, cool, and collected. He was not worried about the Cincinnati Bengals defense. He wasn't worried about their secondary at all. He got creamed on his perfect ball to McLaurin in the end zone, in the back of the end zone for the game winner. And I was amazed. You got to give him credit. You got to give him a lot of credit. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals defense, I don't even know where they go from here, to be quite honest. They had an extra day to plan for the Washington Commanders, and they went out there and looked like that. Cincinnati Bengals defense looked like they were trying to climb Mount Everest in ice skates. Nothing was working for them. And it was incredibly frustrating. And Jalen Daniels, 3 for 3 in the red zone. They had no answer for him. None at all. I was kind of wondering, is Jalen Daniels that good, or is the Cincinnati Bengals defense that bad? It could be a combination of both, to be quite honest with you. Now, we have to note the fact that Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill on their defensive line were both out. They are 2 key components for this defense in order to get stops. It just didn't happen. Because those key guys were not there. And then they have a new guy in there. Yeah, a few new guys in rotation playing defense. And you all hear them talk about the next man up and you got to be ready to play and all that stuff. But I didn't see it. It wasn't translating. They weren't getting enough pressure on Jalen Daniels. He didn't look like he was flustered at all. And now you're going to go in to week 4. You're on a short week. And you're facing the Red Rifle, you're facing Andy Dalton, who just threw for 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's been in the league since 2011. He's got the experience. He's not worried about the secondary after what he just watched on Monday Night Football. He holds a 2-1 record against his former team. If you don't remember, I remember so vividly because I've never seen a man so distraught in my life than when Andy Dalton found out. It was like the day of his birthday or like right before his birthday when he found out that he was benched in 2019 after being told that he was their quarterback moving forward. And it was right before the trade deadline too. So he was unable to go to a different team and be able to play. And because all these guys, they don't want to sit the bench. They don't want to ride the bench. They want to go out and play. That's what they're here for, right? He was distraught. Covering him for local news in Cincinnati was a really hard day because I was just like, in my head, I'm interviewing him and I'm just like, hold it together, Andy, hold it together. Get through all these interviews because I do not want to see you cry over being benched by Zach Taylor on your birthday right before the trade deadline. He did not forget that. I certainly didn't forget it. So I know the guy that it happened to did not forget about that. He is going to go in week 4 and cook the Cincinnati Bengals. That's going to be his goal. And it's not going to be a nice medium rare T-bone steak at Jeff Ruby's. No, it is going to be some unseasoned chewy chicken type of cook. It is not going to be pretty. Cincinnati Bengals are not looking pretty. They gave me zero inspiration last night. Now, what I did like was talking to Jermaine Pratt. He was on the team his rookie season 2019 when the Bengals started 0-11. And he's one of the last remaining players from that team, one of the last remaining starters. And he remembers it well. And I was asking him, I gave him every opportunity in my conversation with him last night to blame injuries, to talk about anything outside of taking the blame himself. And he was full on ready to take accountability. He instantly noted the play where he made a great tackle, punched the ball out, and failed to recover. The Cincinnati Bengals offense or defense was not able to get any takeaways on a rookie quarterback. He was dealing, and the Cincinnati Bengals made him look even better. And I'm really surprised by this. Why? Because Lou Anarumo is well known for disguising defenses and flustering rookies and heck, flustering Patrick Mahomes. That is one of his strengths. And he had a full extra day of planning for this game, and they came out flat. It was nothing that I would want to see over and over again. It's painful enough to have to watch the film of it just so you know exactly what happened. That is definitely a game the Cincinnati Bengals defense would like to forget. And I see a lot of you online, especially Twitter, talking about Cam Taylor-Britt's comments. And I'm going to be honest with you. I disagree that those were a big deal. Cam Taylor-Britt, before the game, the week prior, leading up to the Commanders, he was just kind of talking about, he was asked about Jalen Daniels, and he said, yeah, they run a college offense. And his tone, if you know Cam Taylor-Britt, you know that he was not trying to talk smack in that moment. He was just, to me, it sounded like he was talking as if he was talking to one of his teammates in a meeting, and he was just being blunt and honest, and that was just completely taken out of context. And a lot of people were angry after the game when Zach Taylor was asked about Cam Taylor-Britt's comments. And of course, Zach's in a position where he's like, I've got to say that it's wrong because he's going to look like a jerk if he doesn't. But he's like, yeah, we don't talk about other teams like that, right? And then Cam Taylor-Britt's asked about it again, and he doubles down on it. And people were mad about that. But I really don't think that he did anything wrong. And I don't think Cam Taylor-Britt thinks that he did anything wrong. He obviously, we know back from the Marvin days that you do not want to put up any bulletin board material. But I feel like usually comments like that, like little comments, go further between teams that are rivals, like Bengals Chiefs, Bengals Steelers, Bengals Browns, like those types of games. If you make little comments like that, they already dislike each other so much that it's so easy to take that and run with it. But I don't think that it was that big of a deal. And I've seen a lot of people saying that it fueled the other team. And here's my take on that. If you are an NFL football team and you need to listen to the other team's secondaries pregame speech or anything that they have to say to get motivated to win an NFL football game, you got some issues. So I don't think that even played a factor. I don't even know why that's a storyline, because I that's just ridiculous to me. So we're going to pass on that. Cincinnati Bengals are in a weird position right now. They've got the fourth easiest schedule in the NFL. And they've got a 36.4% chance of making the playoffs. That's not high percentage, but it's also not bad when you consider their schedule. They are talented enough to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are so infuriated with this team, is because they see the talent. They see how good this roster is, and they expect to see a wonderful, exciting product out on the field every single week. And they have not seen that so far in 2024, which is extremely disappointing. That's all it is. It's disappointing. And that's putting it very, very simply. And I've also seen a lot of you talking about Zach Taylor and his job. One thing about me is I'm not going to call for anyone's job. That's not my style. I'm not a hype person. I'm not going to call for anyone's job. I feel like that brings bad karma. And all I can say is that back when Marvin Lewis, he was towards the end of his career in Cincinnati, but I talked to so many coaches during that time, and they continually got one-year contracts over and over and over again. And I feel like the Brown family does repeat history a lot. Like they have habits, and they do the same things over and over. And at the point in 2018, when Marvin Lewis parted ways with the Cincinnati Bengals, there were barely any butts in those seats. They weren't selling tickets. The season ticket sales were dropping steadily. And that is when they made the change. So if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, yeah, I know Mike Brown wants to win a Super Bowl. I believe that he does. I believe that his daughter, Katie, wants to win a Super Bowl. I think his granddaughters want the team to win a Super Bowl. But at the same time, they're not going to go crazy and make any wild changes when their stadium has 66,000 fans in it. It's just not going to happen. And I think the other thing you have to think about when you call for a coaching fire, a coaching change, is how that will affect the rest of the team, the players, the main players who are signed on long-term, like Joe Burrow. I really do think that Joe Burrow would have a huge say in whether or not Zach Taylor keeps his job. And I think it's on him, because a new coach is going to bring in new terminology. He's going to bring in a different vibe. Like in some ways that can be good, and in some ways that could be bad. You don't know if a new head coach would gel well with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Well, T. Higgins, not that he's going to be here for very much longer, I don't think. But you don't know how that relationship will progress or degress. It could put you in a position where you're worse off if you fire Zach Taylor and then you move on to a new guy. So that one, I'm not even going to entertain, because first of all, I don't think the Bengals make that move. It's not in their history. It's not in their MO. And I don't think that they would be comfortable making a change like that. A lot of you claim that you want to see a new defensive coordinator. I think that could be more likely next season, if the trend continues where they are constantly giving up big chunk plays, where they're still unable to stop the run, where they are still getting gashed by almost 40 points a game, I think that there is a potential to see some change in the lower positions outside of the head coach. I don't know where they're going to go from here unless Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill get healthy and get healthy fast. We also saw Trent Brown go down last night. Luckily, Amarius Mims looked wonderful, but judging by the way that Trent Brown walked out of the training room, had this big brace on his knees, got his crutches, which, by the way, he's 6'8". His crutches were like taller than me. It was crazy. But the way that he was gingerly walking, I would bet 4 to 6 weeks that they might be without Trent Brown. It's a big body to lose. very big body to lose. Right now, Joe Burrow, yes, his first game was pretty lackluster. And I think that he should have won in Kansas City. Obviously, they made a lot of mistakes in Kansas City in week 2. We're not going to rehash that. But he didn't do enough to win in Kansas City. Last night, he did do enough to win. Right now, he is ranked as the 8th quarterback in the league as far as passing yards are concerned. And he ranks 5th in total touchdowns. He's got 5 so far in the season. The blame cannot shift to Joe Burrow for last night. It's all on the defense. Defense got burned. It was horrible. And Jalen Daniels was really fun to watch. I'll tell you that. If you're a Washington Commanders fan, you had a hell of a time watching that game last night because you knew you're like, this team, last week, the Washington Commanders are playing the New York Giants. They have 7 opportunities to score. They did not score a touchdown on any of those opportunities. It was all field goals to win the game. And then they're going in Monday Night Football against what you expected to be a very physical defense in the Cincinnati Bengals. You know it's going to be a hostile environment. You know it's going to be loud. Maybe they're going to be off their cadence. It's going to be really tough for this offense. And no, the rookie quarterback came in and threw his first passing touchdown of his NFL career and went on to send the Cincinnati Bengals to 0-3 with a team that has T. Higgins, Zach Moss, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. They're all fully healthy. There's one offensive lineman, Trent Brown, who is not healthy. And I can't even imagine how peeved Joe Burrow is. I would love to know what was running through his mind when he was walking off that field in front of his home crowd after he did everything he possibly could do. We saw a lot of ball security last night. We didn't see a fumble. We didn't see a lot of drops. He threw 2 touchdowns to Jamar Chase. He threw 1 to Andre Yoshibas. And I think he expected to win. Usually when you score 33 points, you would expect to win. Now, I'm not a mathematician by any means, but I did look through their schedule. You should see the papers on my desk right now. It's a mess. That's all I'm going to say. But when I look at the stats, when the opposition scores 25 points or more, the Bengals are 6-16 in the Joe Burrow era. Let's take it down even a little further. When the opposition scores 20 or more points, the Bengals are 16-28-1. This defense has to be better. There's no excuses anymore. Because if they're not better, we're going to continually see Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase put up 30 plus points and walk away with a loss. That's how it's going to go. And I honestly, I don't think anyone's touched on this either. I expected Jamar Chase to have less of a productive game than he had last night. He had 2 touchdowns. He eclipsed 100 receiving yards. I believe it was 118, if my memory serves me right. And I expected the Washington Commanders to be able to do what they saw happen against the Chiefs, where the Chiefs were just getting in his head. I expected him to be hot-headed. I expected them to figure out a way to piss him off and throw him off his game, and they were unable to do that completely. Obviously, I think that T. Higgins being in the game and being active helped Jamar Chase in a big way. But I did not expect him to be as productive. And usually, this is another crazy stat, you guys. Going into that game, if Jamar Chase scores a touchdown, the Bengals were 14-7 when Jamar Chase scores. 2/3 of the time when Jamar Chase scores a touchdown, the Bengals are usually winning. And now I'm looking at their schedule and they need to start winning. Now, the good thing about looking at the way that they've started the last 3 years, they've started 0-2, and their most productive year was in 2022. Let me find that for you, because they were 4-4 before they started their win streak. They did not go on a win streak until week 9, where they beat Carolina 42-21. I believe that was the game where Joe Mixon went crazy and had 5 touchdowns or something wild like that, if I remember. But they didn't start their win streak until November 6th to be exact. And then they rattled off 8 regular season wins, 2 in the postseason, and they were competing with Kansas City in the conference championship game, and they lose by 3 points. The Bengals, me saying that is telling you that while the sky is not falling, if the Bengals defense can get it together, if the Bengals can start stacking wins and stringing these wins together, we could potentially see another win streak into the postseason. Of course, I am a firm believer of health is wealth in the NFL. Tim McGee has said that to me for over 10 years, and I fully believe every single word of that statement. Health is wealth. The team has got to stay healthy, get healthy first of all, but stay healthy as well. I also, when I'm looking at this week's schedule or this year's schedule, I notice that their bye week is not until week 12, which I think is extremely convenient when you think about a team who is battling in a conference or in a division like the AFC North. For years and years and years, every single time the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers faced off, there were at least a handful of injuries coming out of that game. They play so physical. And some of those injuries you probably remember were pretty brutal, and you were almost worried for the guy when he was leaving that game. And when you're playing in the AFC North and you're battling like that, and you're getting your body, just like it's like a train wreck every single week in this division, I mean, you need some rest, especially at the end of the year where you expect to be playing your best football. Because you still, even in week 12, 13, you still have a lot of football ahead of you if you plan on playing in the playoffs. That's another, 2 more months of football? You got to be ready. You got to be fresh. You got to be healthy. You got to be ready to go. To me, I'm not pressing the panic button just yet. Now, do I trust this defense to lift the Bengals up to their first win of the season? I don't know yet. A lot of inconsistency there for me to trust them. I have zero trust in Cincinnati Bengals defense right now. I do like that they are taking full accountability, but I'm not liking the plays that I'm seeing on the field. I am just sickened by it, to be quite honest with you. I think that if they are able to get stops, they're able to stop the run, and their secondary can lock down Andy Dalton and frustrate him, which is truly going to be hard to do because he is a proven vet. I think they can get that win. And I think that the pressure is on harsher than it's ever been for the Cincinnati Bengals. The pressure was on last night, Monday Night Football, and you could feel it. You could feel the pressure that was looming over this team. And that cloud of pressure, that boulder of pressure, it's even bigger now. It's a bigger boulder than there was on Monday Night Football. I'm anxious to see it. The other ding on that is that they're on a short week, so they've got to recover quickly. We will be in the locker room. Of course, I'll have articles out this week, and it's gonna be an interesting locker room. I can't remember a time where a locker room was just. I'm trying to think of the worst locker room I think I've ever been in with the Bengals, because I've covered them this is my 11th season covering this team. I think the worst locker room that I've ever had to go into was the 2015 AFC wildcard game where they were hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I mean, the Bengals did not score until the fourth quarter. Jeremy Hill scores a touchdown run. It was a 1-yard run. Nugent kicked a field goal. And then A.J. McCarron threw a touchdown pass to A.J. Green, and they were up by 1. And then in the final 2 minutes, they just imploded. I've never seen anything like that before in my entire life. Ben Roethlisberger marches down the field. They get into field goal range. Boswell kicks a 35-yarder. They win the game 18-16. I remember walking into that locker room, and I was behind Adam Pac-Man Jones, and he can say more cuss words in a 1-minute time frame than I've ever heard anyone be able to accomplish something like that. Cussing up a storm. I mean, he's pissed, rightly so, because at this stage, The Bengals, I want to say they had like double digits worth of guys who were in their contract year. So everyone knew that this team had to win a playoff game now, or it wasn't going to happen for a while. And this fan base had been starved for a playoff game, over 2 decades of not seeing their team even reach the playoffs. And I walk in and there are guys like they have their heads fully in their hand. And luckily for the media, there was a guy like Andrew Whitworth holding court and answering everyone's questions and talking the media and the fans through what a brutal loss that everyone just watched. Now, luckily for us this year in 2024, we have a guy like Ted Karras who can talk everybody through the losses that they are enduring. But one thing about this team, they've got to get tighter. They've got to get better. They've got to play more physical. I want to see more physical football. I want to see the defense actually know where they're supposed to be on the field. I want to see them in position to make plays. I want to see them get takeaways. If they're not going to do that, then I'm going to get closer to hitting that panic button. The Bengals face Carolina week 4. The Red Rifle is definitely not going to make it easy on them. I don't know what they've got to do, but they've got to figure something out. Something has to be figured out within these next 5-6 days to move on. But that's my rant for the week. We will see you next week. Of course, please click and subscribe. You know what I forgot to do? I told you guys that I would read out your one word used to describe the Bengals' loss last night. And I want to do a few of those because you guys were not holding back. Keith Glenn said it was disappointing. Clay City said terminating. Slapchop said defenseless. Rich Coleman said overwhelmed. Jarno said flag football defense. Oh my gosh. Roast Broadcast said embarrassing, unacceptable. There's trash emojis. I mean, you guys were not holding back in the least. And hopefully you guys are able to send me a few smiley face emojis on the next tweet next week. And if not, we're going to talk about it. I'll see you next week on Deep in the Stripes.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.